call the meeting to order. Before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, after we say the pledge, we're going to remain standing for a moment of silence for Master Sergeant Joe Colantonelli, fondly referred to as the Old Sarge. Sadly, Joe has recently passed away. Joe served 40 years in the Air Force and Army Reserves. Joe Colantonelli was our Director of Veterans Services for almost 20 years. Joe loved his job, his veterans, his family, and friends. Joe gave much to his community, hosting many ceremonies over the years to honor his veterans. Joe was proud of the accomplishments he was able to achieve for the love of freedom. Joe is deeply missed by his saddened community. Good stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Public announcements. We have the annual Abington Cleanup Day, which is being held April 20th from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. The gathering spot is at the Abington Police Station at 215 Central Street to check in. Anybody interested can show up that day, I believe, Sue, is that correct? And I know these have been very successful in the past, and I'm sure that you're looking for a very good turnout again this year. So anybody who could show up to help out and cleaning up Abington would be greatly appreciated.
I don't know.
Other public announcements? Ken, I think you had one.
This Saturday night at the American Legion Hall, the Lions Club will have the third annual comedy night with our special guest, Abington's own Paul Keenan, and 3 other comedians. So if you'd like tickets, contact any Lions or myself. I know we've actually had a couple members on the board here ask for tickets tonight. Always at the last minute, these guys. But anyways, we'd love to see you there. It's a great time, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank the Tricentennial Committee for donating the banner on the podium that you see is new, and that came from them, and it was their idea as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, you had
Yes,
something?
I did. The Abington School Building Committee has been holding regular meetings of its entire 23-member committee, as well as several subcommittee meetings over the past several months. The committee has hired the firm of Knight, Badgie, and Anderson Incorporated, or KBA, to act as the town's project manager throughout the term of the school's feasibility study, which is now underway. Abington School feasibility study is estimated to be completed in early 2013. Between now and then, AI3 will inspect all of our school buildings, establish future buildings and educational needs specific to the town of Abington, and will eventually prepare a preliminary plan for a renovated school, a school addition, or a new building. Those preliminary plans will then be reviewed by both the Massachusetts School Building Authority and residents of the town for further comment and revision. Residents are encouraged to stay in touch with the Abington School Building Committee by logging on to the committee's website at www.A.S.B.C.US. On that website, residents can enter their email addresses to receive future updates or review a list of frequently asked questions or learn more about the state school construction grant process. Again, the website is www.A.S.B.C.US. And obviously, this is a big decision for the town moving forward. And I have to say that the committee is very impressive. There's a lot of hardworking people there. We're trying to be definitely as open process as we possibly can. So anybody has questions, wants to attend our meetings, they can call any member of the superintendent of schools or go on the website, and we'd be more than happy to see what we can do to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other announcements? Oh, thank you, John, yeah. The St. Patrick's Day Parade is being held this Sunday. Kickoff is at 1 o'clock, and it runs down Washington Street, down Adams Street, and into North Abington. So it should be good. It always is. And this is what, the 35th or 34th? Jim Kelleher and the Abington High School football team, which was the Super Bowl champion football team, are the Grand Marshals this year. So it should be exciting. Anything else? Okay, public appointments, 6:30 PM. We have a transfer of a common victualler license, 77 Brocken Avenue Subway. Is there anybody here for that? Can you come up, sir, please? How are you?
Good, how are you? My name is Chris Rose, and as you said, I am purchasing the Subway restaurant that's located at 777 Brockton Ave in the Walmart.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Rose? The hours are 7 to 10, Monday through Friday.
Correct.
7 to 10 on Saturday, 7 to 10 on Sunday.
Stay the same, correct.
The same, okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, John?
I think this is not a sole proprietorship, and so therefore, we're going to need the insurance company name and policy number for workers' compensation.
Correct. Yeah, I'm getting that tomorrow.
If you make a vote, I would make a contingent upon
Yeah, receipt of that.
receipt of that.
Any other questions, concerns? If not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve contingent upon the issuing, town manager receiving the proper insurance certificates,
Yeah, workers' comp
workman's comp.
policy.
I make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second? Any discussion?
Just ask one question.
Sure.
I know I received an email that the fire department signed off on this. All the other boards, relevant boards are signed off too?
They did. The chief of police and the health agent has signed off as well.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Good luck with it.
All right, thank you.
6:35 PM. Steve Wright, is Steve here? He's on his way, okay, so we'll postpone that one off to, want to go to yours, Ken, 6:45 PM. Ken Coyle, the Town Manager Search Committee, and its submission of final candidates for the Town Manager's position.
The Town Manager Search Committee is established by charter. It consists of the town moderator, Sean Riley, one finance committee member, which was Rick Franey, the school superintendent, Peter Schaefer, a citizen at large chosen by the Board of Selectmen, which was Ann Welch, and a representative from the Board of Selection, Board of Selectmen, which was myself. We met, and we sent a letter to the Selectmen explaining, and I'll just paraphrase it if I could. On behalf of the members of the search committee, we are pleased to submit our report and recommendations to the Board of Selectmen as part of Abington's search for its next town manager. The search committee published notice of the job opening and the job description on the Town of Abington's website and on the Mass Municipal Association's website in December, January, and February, and published similar information in the Mass Municipal Association's monthly trade journal. We also prepared a brochure which was mailed to every citizen in town in Massachusetts, and published a copy of the brochure's information on our town's website in order to publicize our search process beyond the boundaries of Massachusetts. Our committee received 34 applications by the February 15th deadline and reviewed each and every application and resume. Applications were received from all over Massachusetts, as well as from 7 other states, including Florida, Washington State, Maine, Vermont, New York, Rhode Island, and Texas. The committee then extended invitations for preliminary interviews to our top 7 candidates, and all the interviews were completed over a 3-day period. We then contacted the personal references of our highest ranked candidates, and the committee met again to review the gathered information. Pursuant to our town charter, our search committee is required to submit a list of at least 3 qualified candidates to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen will then schedule their own round of public interviews for each finalist. The Selectmen will ultimately be responsible to select our next town manager and to negotiate the next town manager's contract. We are pleased to report that the Town Manager Search Committee has unanimously voted to recommend 4 finalists for review by the Board of Selectmen, all of whom have significant municipal management experience. The names of the 4 finalists in alphabetical order are Mr. William Delibero, who resides in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, Mr. Richard LaFond, who resides in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, Mr. Grady Miller, who resides in Narragansett, Rhode Island, and Mr. O. Paul Shu, who resides in Franklin, Massachusetts. The resume of each finalist was given to the Board of Select. All members have been provided copies, along with their cover letters. Each of these candidates brings to Abington a significant background in municipal management, experience with budget preparation and administration, and admirable interpersonal skills. The search committee understands that the eventual selection by the Board of Selectmen will help guide Abington and its residents through the next chapter of the history of our town government, and we trust that all of the named finalists will demonstrate that they are well-suited to serve as Abington's next town manager. Sincerely, the Town Manager Search Committee.
Any questions of,
Everybody has a packet with the
Yes.
resumes of the 4 finalists, and I think we have made some additional copies for the press if anybody else would like to.
questions?
Yeah, we have to set up,
We're going to do that later on in the, as part of an agenda item later on. Okay. Tom?
Kenny, I see you had a list of 10 questions, and just briefly, you mentioned that you asked each of the applicants each of these questions?
Each of the 7 finalists were asked the same identical 9 questions, and the last question was actually a question that gave us, we could open it up and have a spectrum of a back and forth. The last question was, do you have any questions for us? That way, if we had questions, they could open the lines of communication and a give and take, but we were very careful that all 7 of our, let's call them semi-finalists, were asked the exact same question.
Was this taped, or was it some sort of,
It has to be done in executive session, because until this point, it had to be done in executive session, the interviews, because then we have permission to release and contact their personal references, so now everything's been released, because some of these people, you know, have jobs, you know.
No, I understand that, I'm just wondering, so there's nothing that shows how they responded to any of these, you don't have any?
We all took notes, and I think that may be available. I'm not positive how that works, but
Okay.
we did all take notes, and we've kept them, so I'm not sure from a legal standpoint if they're available to
Okay,
the selectmen or not.
thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. We'll go back to the 6:35 PM public appointment. I saw Steve had come in. How are you, Steve? That's okay. You want to come up and, you just introduce yourself again?
Steve Wright with Kleinfelder, project manager. And this is not a lot of visual presentation this evening. No PowerPoint, just the intent here is to give you an update on sort of funding and the projections for funding going forward for FY 14, 15, and 16. So that information is a handout you should have, which is my edited version, but you know, it's an 8.5 by 11. Hopefully it's fairly easy to read. And it basically, if you want me to walk you through it, I can walk you through it, or I could
Yes,
just
good.
spare you that and you can
Well, if you can walk us through it briefly, I guess.
rifle any questions. So essentially, we're looking at 3 more fiscal years before we're wrapped up with assessment and closure. And I'll get into this a little bit, but the question had come up in preparing numbers, whether the town should appropriate essentially everything, I think, in an upcoming town meeting, as opposed to breaking it into segments by fiscal year. And generally on landfill projects, we do it by fiscal year because it's a kind of a voyage of discovery. As you go along, you find out things, and it informs the way you're going to go in the following year, and ultimately you come up with your closure plan that, as much as we try to set aside funding here, it's intended to be more on the worst-case scenario, but by the time you get there, the hope would be it wouldn't be that level of financial burden, hopefully. And so to appropriate prior or as a lump sum too early on, you may not be able to answer the questions, let's say to the voters, is, well, what are you doing out there? And right now, we know what the obligation of the town is to assess and then close the landfill. But how we close it, whether there's a post-closure use activity out there or on the back part of the site, or whether you import that mildly impacted fill as an option to defray closure costs. Those are all things that have always been in the mix. And to determine whether we're going to pull the trigger on any of those, they have an effect on potentially reducing the closure costs. If you bring in imported soils, impacted soils, that would reduce your closure costs. So until we get there, it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to appropriate right out of the gate for that. Now, getting there is what's in front of you here. And basically, what you have every year built into this, and there's less detail as you go from, to 2016, but you have compliance monitoring, and that's something required by the state at every landfill. You got to do landfill soil gas monitoring, near surface monitoring in the compost area, groundwater monitoring, surface water monitoring, and potentially sediment monitoring. Sediment has been the one area, if you recall, last time I came here, sediment appears to be an impact to some degree. Not so much groundwater, which is good, not so much surface water, but sediment. And sediment as a receptor issue is really an ecological risk. So it'd be better to not have any sediment impact, but as things go, at least it's not mobile like a groundwater impact. So regardless of what you have for impact, the town is obligated, like all towns that own a landfill, to continue post-closure, what they call post-assessment, post-closure monitoring for groundwater, soil gas, surface water, and sediments. So that's this line item in here. And then there's also, as part of that line item for the $59,000, there's also regulatory compliance and assistance on an as-needed basis that we have as a consulting line item that if it's drawn on, it's drawn on. If it's not, it doesn't get spent. It's about $15,000 of that $59,000 item. Then we have I don't want to necessarily call it a set-aside, but for lack of a better word, it is at this point $36,000 for supplemental CSA monitoring and scoping for the alternatives analysis. Right now, we're working on the CSA report, which takes all the environmental data and presents it in a comprehensive report and advises the state as to what we found. It sets the groundwork for what kind of alternatives should we look at for mitigating impact at the site. At this stage, given that groundwater looks pretty good, surface water looks good, and again, we only have the sediment, and in conversation with DEP that really dates back probably almost a year now, the DEP has thrown out the possibility that perhaps if there's a limited enough impact at that site, you could realistically look at a no-action alternative. Now, as to whether that ultimately is something the DEP would accept, it needs to be vetted through, in part, through the CSA, the Comprehensive Site Assessment, which, again, should be submitted to the state at the end of next month. And that's going to lay the groundwork, again, for the alternatives. It'll demonstrate the level of impact and what kind of alternatives that we should look at. So this $36,000 item is a set-aside if the state comes back and says, we want you to do some additional sampling, potentially sediment sampling, as well as scoping for an alternatives analysis. And the scoping of an alternatives analysis, if we really have the potential of looking at no-action alternative, which basically means you don't do anything. You may, at a minimum, if you want to continue to do compost and recycling at the site, that continued activity, the state may say, well, you got to do some type of cap or cover. And it may just be as simple as pave it. No membrane underneath. I mean, that's what we would look at as an alternative. The state, in the beginning of this process, was not considering a no action. They were requiring assessment activities and ultimately closure. They weren't satisfied that anything had been done out there to document that you had closed accordance with any regulations. And yet more recently, they at least have suggested that it might be an alternative. So if we look at that as an alternative, and it tends to be a default alternative in any corrective action alternative analysis you do, you just don't expect them to accept it. You put it in there just so that they say, oh, that's nice. So if you don't do anything, you don't spend any money and nothing gets improved. Let's look at the standard alternative for a membrane cap and all that. Well, the standard alternative would also be presented in this alternatives analysis. And then it's the slicing of alternatives in between, which could be trying to advocate an alternative cap. Maybe trying to get a cover system that would be in compliance with regulations that were in effect in 1975 when the town did its partial closure work in the front part of the site. And that would be less expensive than the current standards. There'd be no membrane in there. The cover soils would be less, the thickness would be less, and the permeability requirements would be less. So that's another alternative, a lesser intensive type of cap. And then the other alternative would be looking at importing fill. And I think what makes sense about a particular alternative in terms of importing fill is the quantity that we looked at back in 2007 and got the approval from the Selectmen and the Board of Health and vetted in front of the public, which was importing fill to fill up the back part of the site. The town now owns the parcels of land, particularly on the former Newcomb property. So there's nothing holding you back in terms of being able to look at that and say, well, it's all our land, we could bring it in. 150,000 yards of material. And that would be one of the alternatives that, in the alternatives analysis, that we at last officially put forward and at least be able to compare to the other alternatives to say, well, how does this financially compare? Because when we do an alternatives analysis, we look at some of the technical issues, we put conceptual, schematic level like details together and plans, and we cost it out. And then we coordinate with the town because the town has to pick its preferred alternative. Now, if it was a result of this process, if the town looks at everything and says, well, if the no-action alternative really is viable, and we'd want to explore this further with DEP after we submit the CSA report, maybe by meeting with the state, and saying, okay, you got this information, we're very interested in exploring the no-action alternative, but we don't want to waste our time with it if you're just going to make us go through it and then not seriously consider it. We have that type of meeting, remain hopeful that they would say, yeah, based upon the information you have in that report, it seems like a viable approach. Then the no-action alternative is going to give you, in all likelihood, the requirement that you never return to the site to do anything there. If you wanted to go back at some point in the future, do solar, do anything at that site, short of what we would work into your immediate desire for composting and recycling, because the state suggested that. If they go no action, then they can't use that site for anything else. They'd need to get approval from us before they do anything out there in the future. And then they'd probably have to go through the process, well, not the process, but they'd have to cap it. You would have already assessed it. So that would be the one hook to that. Now, if in the town's mind right now, we have no interest in doing anything at that site unless we, or only to continue composting. If the composting alternative was really just requiring a paved area in the front, so that's a manageable cost, might be 2-3 acres of pavement or lay down area in the front part of the site, and that you felt as though, so why import fill? Why have that to offset the cost of a typical cap? It comes out to be the lowest cost alternative. The town may say, let's go with that. We understand the ramifications with that, what the limitations are in terms of having to come back to it maybe in the future if we decide to do anything in the back part of the site. But let's go with that alternative. And if you pick that alternative, that gets put in this alternatives analysis report that it's the town's preferred alternative. And then we wait to, or like any other alternative, and then you wait to get DEP approval on that. So the corrective action alternatives analysis is really the watershed document to lay out what the town has adopted to go forward with and what corrective action is it backing. And it's at that point that you have your roughed out costs that were done for each alternative. And now you start to understand, okay, what's the implementation schedule too? We know what we're aiming to do, then you're waiting for DEP approval on the report. But we know what we're aiming to do, and once we get that approval from the DEP, then we can go in front of the voters, put it out there and say, based upon the selection of alternatives, we felt that this was in the town's best interest. This is the one we want to, this is the number we're putting out there to do a no action or to do an importation of fill and do a standard cap or however it resolves itself. So until that CAAA is done, it doesn't make a lot of sense to, I don't believe anyway, to forecast forward, because if you look at the bottom line number in 2016, that $3.6 million is assuming a typical cap over 12 acres you know, to give you the worst-case projection, but it may not be that. So we get ourselves through FY 2014, projecting that alternatives analysis, taking into account DEP review and approval of the report that we're now working on, the end of this year, to have an alternatives analysis done. And there's going to be, when I say done, like we will have thought out how we want to lay out all the different alternatives, how we'll cost them up. Then there's going to be a period of time to have to coordinate that with the town. To say, well, what are you coming up with? How do these alternatives look? Which one do we want to endorse? So there's likely some time after December 2013, probably right around this time next year, where we have maybe an adopted alternative. And then it goes into the state, they review it, and we go from there. So 2015, we have another FY 2015 contingency item in here, and the order here is kind of dependent upon the CAAA as well. The first item is design, permitting, and bidding for the landfill closure. And I have timeline for that is July to October 2014 is where this work starts. If the alternatives analysis goes in, and one of the preferred alternative is to import soils, as for whatever reason it's determined, whether the state says, no, we think that you really need the cap, whatever the reason would be to drive a cap, or if the town knows it wants to do something on the back part of the site, or it just wants to cap it and get it done with. Anything driving capping, the importation of fill is an opportunity to reduce the closure costs. Round numbers, you know, we're saying 150,000 yards of available capacity in the back part of the site to bring in material. Assuming you could get $10 a yard, and that's always been the number we've kind of carried, that's $1.5 million, potential defraying of the cost. There are design activities associated with that. The whole premise has been, if the town goes that route, if they feel as though they're going to have to deal with some type of closure, and then to defray that cost, bring in this material, then we've carried this $180,000 line item for engineering, settlement analysis. You know, you load that, surcharge that back area of the landfill. You don't want to mobilize anything. There's a lot of peat underlying it that you compress, and you may mobilize. So you do a settlement analysis that would tie to whether you wanted to do anything in the back part of the site, whether it was, at one time it was talking about solar, at another time it was maybe fields. But at 150,000 yards, you're probably not doing anything out there because it's just going to be a hill. There's still a settlement analysis. There's still some type of design package. A lot of it's going to be related to how you control the importation of that material, how you're going to get paid for that material, what the routes are over the road that the material will be brought in. So not to belabor that, but there's a design and an on-site management so that the contractor who's coming in there, he's under control. Because the idea is one contractor, not you'd shop it out and different guys are coming in. It would be a contractor that would bid this and give the town the best dollar value to bring material in, and he would be required to do it under certain constraints, under any, like a typical bid. And then there would be on-site observation for that. So this estimate includes some of that, on-site observation, design, bidding, Conservation Commission permitting, and then that would likely be, if the town's option, or preferred option in the alternatives analysis was to import fill, it would likely be the first thing you would end up doing in fiscal year 2015. You'd get that done, you'd bring that material in, you'd get a post-fill survey so you know what the back part of the site is, and then you'd start your design activities. Now you got your site in your kind of final condition. In which case, these design activities for 279 start to flip more. They would still happen and start in 2015, but they would extend into FY 2016. So at this point, I've just put this 180,000 for importation of fill as a placeholder that I think, you know, going into next year, we may know this time next year that you have no intention to bring that material in. If that's the case, you strike that number right off, and you're looking at 279 for next year. If it is something that you think you're going to do, then it's additive, and it's the 459. Yes, sir.
Just, Steve, one question. I made a note. You said there were 3 things we're monitoring. Groundwater, I think you said that looked good. Potentially a problem with the sediment impact. What was the third one?
There's soil gas, gas
Oh, the gas.
migration, and on-site gas generation, and what's called near-surface monitoring, because the DEP is required in your composting area that surface monitoring for gas emissions coming through the surface be monitored, just to make sure there's no buildup of gases that could be impactful to anybody going out there, whether it's employees or residents dropping things off. We've never detected anything.
Based on your testing to date, those 2 are looking
They
good
look
at this point?
yeah. It's just really, it's the sediment in the stream. There's a stream that cuts across the middle of the landfill through a culvert, and there's some sediment impact on the adjacent to the perimeter of the landfill.
When you say sediment, you mean it's
It's in the wetland
impacted?
soils. It's in wetland soils.
Okay.
Not yeah, sediment kind of sounds like maybe runoff.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
It's silted into,
Right.
and maybe historically there was some component of that, but it's really the wetland soils that exist around the landfill have shown some metals impact that exceed ecological standards.
Okay. The other question, just when did we start this? It
When
seems.
we started,
Yeah, when did your firm become involved? Are we into this
Well-
for 2 or 3 years?
we started probably in 2004, but it was a lot of administrative consent order related
Right.
coordination activities and negotiation, and things kind of went quiet for a little while, waiting for DEP to respond to some of our positions on the consent order. And things really probably started in 2006, really in terms of investigations out there, and that was test pitting, limits of waste type of thing.
All right. And how much, do you know how much we might have spent in that time period? I guess where I'm going is, we're looking at a figure of 175, which if I understand you correctly, we should get to the end of the tunnel here at the end of this coming year, so we'll know what our options are.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Where, like the numbers in the past, there was assessment, environmental, like the article that was from 2010, I think was a $275,000 article in
That's
2010. And then predating that, we had survey work, and predating that, there might have been, it's dangerous to estimate these things, but from prior to 2010, it might have been $200,000 or $150,000 worth of work over 4 years, maybe, something like that.
So I guess in conclusion, I guess what I'm hearing is go through 2014, do your assessment, maybe find some cheaper alternatives, and then report back to more or less get into more of a concrete discussion of what our
Select a
options are.
preferred, alternative
Yeah.
for
If
for
DEP
corrective action.
approves.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
There's, just not to interrupt, but all of this information is on the website. So anyone can go to the website.
Good.
There's 6 alternatives or whatever, so most of this information on the website is a little outdated. This is newer information. We'll add that.
Any other questions, comments?
I have one observation. Many communities are using the solar option as a way to finance long-term and short-term, the cost of capping. I know that we're looking at impacted soils, and that's going to save us $1.5 million. Has any analysis been done in relationship to the most cost-effective way to close the landfill short of the 150,000 cubic yards of impacted soil, to see if any of the solar options over time with a purchase power agreement may save us more than 1.5 million?
We haven't done that. We did meet with a solar provider that Alex, had kind of sat with us, and Alex Bezanson, and we showed him what we had for developable area if we didn't import any fill in the back part of the site. And it was like, I think it might be 4 acres a flat area in the back part of the site. And after having at least spoken to him about it, to just vet it, the feeling was, well, you know, you might get a megawatt out of it, because you get about a megawatt out of a 4-acre area, and I don't think it necessarily struck him as advantageous as he had hoped it would be. Now, in terms of talking to other solar developers or anything like that, and this is something that we can do as part of an alternatives analysis, and it's a set-aside. Do we include solar as an area to explore? But you want to talk to somebody that's not just trying to sell you something, because that can happen too. They tell you that, you know, it's going to be everything, and then when it comes time to deliver, sometimes there's nothing there.
Well, the value is in the purchase power agreement.
Yeah.
If you have enough acreage for solar, it becomes something that you should consider. I guess if we don't do that option, if we don't explore that option, I don't think we're doing justice to the townspeople in relationship to finding the most cost-effective closure options. But the option, there were 9 options that were presented way back when. I don't know.
Well, those were originally probably 2007,
Yeah.
2006, 2007.
We settled on option 3 at the time. Option 3 just domes it, kind of. It doesn't provide for an alternative to utilize most of the acreage for solar purposes.
Right.
And as a result of that, I don't think any of these options give justice to the potential for solar financing, long-term and/or short-term. And I do know that there have been advances in solar technology that would allow for lack of a better term, a blanket coverage of the area, which has less weight, and it's almost like a membrane of solar, which is a material versus the structures
the photocell type
themselves.
of.
Right. And I don't know if those options are worth exploring, but I would recommend that, you know, at the minimal, we look at these options and see what we could get for revenue that would offset any additional costs to prepare the site for solar beyond the 4 acres, which is, it's 4 acres a megawatt. And I think if we get to 3 to 4 megawatt hours, and we sign a purchase power agreement for 20 years, at which point, at some point, we may own the panels or not, depending upon what we end up doing, that may be a more favorable approach long-term than the 101.5 million in impacted soils, which I don't have a problem with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a viable option, but I think it's more, in today's day and age, it's more of a standard option of closure, where you get the impacted soils, you close it, you put your membrane, or you don't. I like your option of not doing anything. I think that's probably the best. But, you know, in hindsight, knowing DEP the way I know DEP, that alternative is less likely than probable.
Yeah, I wouldn't really be talking about it unless they had mentioned it on their own end, which I was surprised to hear them say that.
Yeah, that was nice.
You know, reflecting on maybe.
They could have been sick that day.
Yeah, well, you know, you do have to be careful that way. You don't want to take it too quickly, but
Right.
That's why we'd want to vet that with them in a sit-down after we submit the CSA. With respect to the landfill and area available, the town acquired about 5 acres on the, what is now Cape Cod lumber property. That was gifted over, I guess. And
We still haven't closed on that, just so you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask for, like, whenever I can get documentation, I was going to check on the registry to see if it's been
No.
recorded yet.
No.
Because DEP will be looking for that, too, that we can give them something to confirm. It's great to be able to tell them that you're pretty much there, but they're going to be looking for some type of conveyance documentation.
That's being worked on, though, John, correct?
I'm sorry?
That's being worked on as far as the conveyance.
Oh, yes, no, it is. There's a little snag about cost. I think, we want to pay a buck for it, and, so we're working on straightening that out so that we can have clear title. That's what we're looking for.
Does that have to go to town meeting? To
I
set
think it
that?
already has gone to town meeting. Yeah, so all we're waiting for now is the ability to secure clear title.
Okay.
Once we get that clear title, then, it'll be something that we'll give you as part of
Now,
our information.
You probably already have Northeast Modular Homes. The other side, the small 1 acre parcel, is that already recorded? I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's been recorded, but it has. Okay. So there's it's a strip of land on our property on the eastern side of the
Yeah, we
site.
paid $171,900 for it, yeah. Small.
But when you look at the acreage of town land now, it's grown by, with that 5 acres on one side and about a 1 acre on the other. It's 6 acres that it's grown. Those 6 acres predominantly really take care of the landfill itself. There's not a lot of additional area off of that. And then when you look at the landfill that, the main body of the landfill that sits on historically town land, you add up all the pieces and you've got, of high ground, you probably have 14 plus 6. You've got about 20 acres now of town land. Used to be about 15. Maybe it's about 21 acres of town land. But a lot of that's wetland. If it's not landfill, it's wetland. So when we talk about, just quickly to say, how much would be developable out there for, say, solar as a flat area? I think the back part of the site, as it exists right now on a plateau, I believe is maybe 4.5 acres. It's in that information there. It's hard to find additional area because as much as you've got 21 acres and the landfill is 12 acres, the landfill is most of really your upland area. Everything else is all this wetland that's off to the west, to the east. So it's hard to find that additional, ideally, okay, if it's a megawatt per 4 acres, then you're looking at, say, 12 to 16 acres. I don't see where you can find that. You maybe can find 4 acres, maybe 6 acres. But the point's well taken.
You need it in 4 acre increments.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, then you're bringing in your.
What I'm saying is that maybe we bring in additional fill material. And maybe that's something that's part of the closure cost for the long-term revenue piece that in a purchase power agreement that the town may be able to realize to offset. Here's the issue. The issue is that at some point in time, you're going to go to the voters of this community, you're going to ask them for a large sum of money. 1.5 million, in my estimate, is not going to remove the sticker shock, so to speak, of the actual cost of closure. If we're capable and able to offset that by saying, we need 3.6 million to close this, but the actual amount that we're going to borrow is far less, and it's going to be offset by a continuous revenue stream of some sort of long-term purchase power agreement that's going to bring in additional revenue to offset that cost. People will be more acceptable to something like that, I think, long-term than they would be to just forking out 3.6 million. We're going to have a school that may or may not be built. We're going to have a number of other, exclusions that the town is going to face. And closing a landfill, from my experience, is really not on the top of anyone's referendum list for.
Priority?
Yeah. That's just my
No, I
2.5 cents.
I don't know if that's something you can look at as far as the
We
solar.
can. I mean, I had always looked at
And I guess that
generally
depends on-
4 alternatives, and they vary depending upon the front part of the site and the back part of the site, because I think the front part of the site is essentially spoken for in terms of what the town wants to
Right.
continue to do. But there can be alternatives for that vary from the alternatives in the back. So 4 basic alternatives, there might be slight differences whether you're front or back on each one of those. And the 5th one would be solar, whether it's solar standalone and no importation of fill, or could it be a combination of importing some fill and doing solar? So it's out there as an option that can be investigated as part of this alternatives analysis. Absolutely.
What's your feeling on that, guys? You have a feeling one way or the other, or?
Well, I think you should do sort of an order of magnitude. I'm not sure how much we need to get into it, but I'm sure there's formulas as far as how much space you need to make solar, feasible. And coming into tonight and following it a little bit, I was always led to believe we did not have the space up there to make it a commercially viable alternative. But in my mind, if it was, then I think we should consider it. But I'm not sure if I want to dive in spending a lot of money to look at solar at this point. I just as soon have Steve go away and, do his work in 2014 and come back, and maybe he'll come back with a recommendation. You don't have to do anything. Maybe unlikely, but that'd be my feeling.
Are you going to come back to us with a recommendation on what you think we should do, or are you going to give us a set of?
Yeah, I mean, it would let the board know. See, as we develop our alternatives, so we submit the CSA report. It's the next report we have to submit. Yeah. And in all likelihood, what I would recommend to the DEP as part of that is we will develop an alternatives analysis scope of work following your review of the CSA. And that way, and we'll plant things in the CSA to kind of give them an idea of what we'd like to do. No action alternative is one. And then sit with them before they make their approval and say, what do you think of what we have in here? Because here's what we're thinking for alternatives. How many of these pass the test that it really makes sense for us to go into? And I'm sure they'll say for all of them, yeah, you want to look at solar, that's great. You want to look at importing fill, you've already went through that process. We have no problem with any of those. What we'd want to get some buy-in, if you will, from them is if we do an alternative cover system, something less rigorous, that they're going to accept that. So let's say we try to do something to a 1971 standard. I don't want to just put it in the report and have made this up in my own mind. I've done it at other sites, but they all have to be site-specific. So you sit down with them and say, how do you feel about that? Is that viable? Yeah, that's reasonable. We think you could go that way based upon what's in this report. So we would meet with them face-to-face. And when we got those alternatives back, then I could come back to you. And I'd say, here's what looks good from this meeting. What do you guys think?
Okay.
Okay. I think that's the plan. So when would you come back?
Well, you figure it's probably going to take them all of May, all of June. It's probably like July.
Okay.
So why don't we have to come back maybe in August or so?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Comments?
August.
Well, that's something we'll have to discuss, I guess, is the 175. Is that, don't you have that, is there a warrant article for that? Or?
Yeah.
There is.
We'll be talking about that. Okay, Steve, thank you
We're
very much.
determining whether or not we're going to borrow it from within on a short-term basis, or it's something that we're not going to debt exclude. If we're going to do a debt exclusion, it'll be for the total amount project, which would include 3.6 million as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
informative, thanks. So we'll see you in, probably in August at some point.
I'll leave extra early.
Okay, action discussion items. Item number 1, approval of February 25th, 2013 open session minutes. Do you have a motion? There was a revised set of minutes that Dory did up, I think, so.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second, any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Item number 2, vote to postpone the special and annual town meetings to June 10th, 2013. John?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to speak on that
Yep.
for a minute. We're going to need a sooner special town meeting, as we will run out of money for the rubbish collection issue, and we'd probably like to put some money in to pay town council So I would recommend for the annual that we obviously postpone it to June 10th, but that we hold a special at the end of April, at the end of April. No later than the end of April.
Is there any way, well, the regular town meeting is usually held the first Monday in April, correct?
April 1st.
Would it be feasible to go that date?
It may be.
And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think there were only 5 articles on the
small
special.
warrant.
It's not the number of articles, it's where we're gonna be able to pull the money from, to pay for these requests. And we're gonna start doing that tomorrow, so I'll have a better idea by the end of the week. But if you wanna do it April 1st, we can do April 1st for the special.
Well, I want to do it what's convenient for you, obviously. but
Well,
also-
I would say that, again, I'm not quite certain at this point if we can make the April date, but let's shoot for it. Let's do what we can on April 1st.
The finance committee is involved in this too, though, correct?
Right, they'd have to have their recommendations.
Well, that's why I said closer to the end of
Well,
April would be
if that's a
better.
more feasible date, then.
More feasible date for us, including the finance committee.
Anybody have any feelings on that? Or-
No, I think if that's the case, I would, unless there's any other discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I'd move that pursuant to General Law, Chapter 39, Section 9, which statutes permit the Board of Selectmen to delay the date of the annual town meeting, notwithstanding the provisions of any general law, bylaw, or charter to the contrary, to hold the annual town meeting on June 10th, 2013, at 7 p.m. at Abington High School, and further to hold a special town meeting on Monday, April 29th, 2013, at 7 p.m. at Abington High School, and further that the date of the annual town election, Saturday, April 27th, 2013, is unaffected by the vote hereunder and shall be held as scheduled.
I'll ask for a second, and then I'm going to ask a question. Is there a second?
One second.
The primary election is April 30th,
Oh, right.
so I think there'd be a problem maybe as far as the setup of the
Can we do
Yeah,
the
you're right.
22nd?
Sure,
April 22nd
whatever
April.
works. Yeah,
That would be-
fine. Okay, April 22nd
on the special.
on the special. I'll amend that.
I'll second as amended.
Oh, is that, no, it
And
isn't.
the 27th is
School
the
vacation.
town election.
I mean, do we know that everything's going to be ready for that, Jim, or? have we
Excuse
checked-
me?
Have we checked into the possibilities if there's functions going on in the school or anything like that?
We've cleared the June 10th date.
You have?
Yeah, that's clear. But we haven't cleared the April date yet.
We'll clear the April date for the 22nd
Right.
with the schools. If there's a problem, we'll get back to you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. April 22nd on the special town meeting, June 10th on the annual town meeting. Any discussion?
Just my other question, is nobody else pushing to pull it in, to do it earlier?
Say again?
There's nobody that's, any group, schools, any department to pull it in earlier? Because I guess my only concern, as I've stated before, is when we had the representatives in last week, to me, it was clear that right now we're getting an extra $71,000 in local aid, and I think Senator Keenan was pretty clear it's unlikely we're gonna go above that particular amount. And if anything, there's risk coming down with the governor's proposal and some of the tax hikes. The other thing that I see, John, is that you're working on some other savings at this point, and I guess my question is, when do you assume that will come to a conclusion? You put out a note on the 9th on some additional savings of $268,000 that you're working.
Potentially, yes. We're negotiating that right now.
Is there any sort of a drop-dead date, or is it just
April,
open-ended?
26th, I think.
Enrollment, no, the enrollment period, I don't think
I think it's April 26th.
hang on. Let me look.
Can I make a
I
suggestion?
think,
Yes.
I don't think it's April. Yeah, I think it's, hang on a second, it might be April.
Can we, how about if we just go with the annual town meeting for right now, sort of regroup? We'll have time at our next meeting on the 25th. There's still ample time if we want to call it special for a given point, and if we have better, clearer idea from, from a financing standpoint and the finance committee.
I have
What do you
no
think
prob-
about that?
I have no problem with that.
I like that, Kevin.
Okay, I'll withdraw the part of my motion that was amended.
Why don't we just start fresh?
Why don't
with a
I
new
just
motion?
start again? How's that? I withdraw the entire thing.
Yes.
And I'll move that pursuant to the provisions of General Law, Chapter 39, Section 9, which statute permits the Board of Selectmen to delay the date of the annual town meeting, notwithstanding the provisions of any general law, bylaw, or charter to the contrary, to hold the annual town meeting on June 10, 2013, at 7 p.m. at Abington High School, and further that the date of the annual town election, Saturday, April 27, 2013, is unaffected by the vote hereunder and shall be held as scheduled.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And then we'll revisit the scheduling of a special at our next meeting.
Well, we wanted to be able to get the notification out that would have both the annual and the special, so that we would
But
do
that would still
one
give us enough
mailing.
time.
Yeah,
We have another meeting in March.
Yeah, the 25th.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
so that would still give us time.
Give us enough time.
Yep.
Okay, item number 3, review of the special and annual town meeting warrant. We went through this last meeting.
There,
Has much changed since our last?
I don't think so.
go-around?
Do
No,
we
just-
add an article?
Just the, the borrowing article for the landfill, for the 175,000, and then there's one added article. You'll see at the very last article, 24,
For the annual?
for the annual, Article 24. Just a $10,000 article. Everything else remains the same.
And that's going to get firmer and firmer as we get
Yes.
farther down the road.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions on
No add.
that so far? or-
It's plain.
No, I just, at the last meeting, I did request that format-wise for the salary, there'd be 2 columns to show. I didn't see that on the latest copy. I'd like to see that at the next one. Do you know what I mean, Dory, in Article
Yes.
2 or 3A, whatever it is?
Mhm.
It has the recommended salaries for these positions, but it
Are
doesn't
you
show what
talking
they're
about-
making.
Are you talking about the warrant itself?
The warrant, yeah.
You want that information in the warrant?
I'd
We-
prefer it, yeah, for the townspeople, sure.
We would provide it as a handout. We usually provide a sufficient amount of backup information.
Yeah, I think that's how
We're
it's
gonna
worked
have
in
to
the-
print up a number of warrants, so.
I think that's how it's worked in the past, Tom, only because you're going from one salary to the next salary as far as the article goes. And then the backup information included a more detailed analysis of,
Yeah, like.
Oh, you're saying you would just provide it to the people that attend a town meeting?
well, and on the website.
Well, we're not mailing the warrant
Yeah.
out to
Yeah,
anybody.
And the warrant's not getting mailed out
Right.
anymore, so.
It just seems in past, when I look at the general funds, there's just one column here, right? I can say on the warrant in past years, we would show at least the previous year, and in many cases, we'd show 2 years, so
On the
residents can see.
Yeah, on the budget, we generally have the
Yeah,
previous
and-
year and, yeah.
And that's-
Last year, we didn't last year, but we had it on the handout, which is why it's
Right.
confusing. So we have that information already. The town accountant did that today for a handout.
But my preference would be to put it
On the
actually
warrant?
on the warrant, as it's appeared, maybe not last year, but in years past, but, that's just me.
Well, I guess you can do it.
If you can fit it on there, yeah, the prior year. I think that's
All right.
not too much.
I think we've had it in the past.
We have had it in the past. We didn't last year because we had that extensive handout.
So we won't, we'll do less of a handout. I mean, if you,
You get the information.
Six and
As
one
long
and a
as
half
people
dozen
get the
in the other.
information, that's the, I think.
Right.
As long as people get the information, I think that's
Right.
what's important, so. Okay, anything else on that?
Did we vote?
We didn't take any votes, but did you want to make a motion? or-
No, I didn't know if we voted on Kevin's, did we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that, yeah.
Also, one other item that we're going to include in the revolving accounts is, just to put everybody on notice, over the last 2 years, we have been scrutinized by our DOR rep in relationship to the amount of the limit established on the funds, and we haven't expended near that amount. And this is something that has been an issue with me for a while. So what we're going to do, for transparency purposes, we're going to include a report on the prior year, the actual amount raised in the revolving account and the actual amount spent. And what we're going to do, and hopefully the board would agree, is that we'll reduce those numbers accordingly, so that, they get, the department gets what they need, but that, if we've only raised, I'm going to use an example of the first one, which is the fire alarm system townwide. If we only raised about $8,000, why do we have a limit
Of 20.
20? And so we're going to go through that and provide those types of recommendations. We're going to also provide the actual report of what we received and how much was spent from each of the revolving accounts.
Good. Very good. Item number 4, discussion on adding salary increases to the Park and Recreation Department. John?
I received from Kenan a document that I think I had sent out to the board that deals with the issue of the current salaries in the Park and Rec and what we were projecting to expend duties and funds for the existing personnel. And this was done, I think, as a result of Mark Shirokis's, passing. And we're not in a situation right now to hire a Park and Rec director at this point, or a park director or a recreation director. And I'm probably going to leave that to whoever the new town manager is. I'm not going to make those types of decisions. So, based on the vote that was taken by the board, we need to do something to fill in. And I had quite an extensive email exchange about, is the money budgeted? The money is budgeted, but it's not in the appropriate line items for salaries. And so, if we appropriate more money in the salary line item, I can't do that without a vote of the Board of Selectmen to make those additional expenses in the salary line item.
Okay, and this information from Kenan, is this his recommendation on what should be happening?
At least at this point, yes.
Have you guys seen this?
I do get a copy of this. Can I speak?
Introduce yourself for us.
Hi, Russ Esau, Chairman, Park and Rec. Basically, I got some statements and then just some questions. One is, as you all know, a number of years ago, we went from a $285,000 budget to a zero. So I don't know if that caused us to just get out of finance committees and all that other stuff, but I'd say we just haven't heard from anybody. And now we've had this go on, and last year, unfortunately, we went on with Mark and everything. We realized we needed an interim recreation person. Now, Kenan has taken over the duties, and we've changed things out in the maintenance and so forth. But in terms of the recreation, it's not much different than town manager, assistant town manager. to say, well, you know what, if we get rid of the town manager, the assistant town manager can do it. It is a day-to-day thing. We, as a board, I've had to go to nights. We had an adult basketball league. They had been playing, we hadn't even collected the money. We just, the day-to-day, the picking up, the physical stuff. In the summer, all the different summer things that are going on, all the camps, all the vacations and schools. We try to, Christmas vacations and February vacations, we try to run programs, whether it's Legos. It's not all sports, it's recreation. We're also working with getting stuff down for the seniors. We want to do some more of that trips. A lot of things we'd like to do, but we need someone to sit there and document this out. I realize about the financing of it and how do we do it. The only thing I could suggest now is if we have a certain amount that takes us to the end of the fiscal year, and then go with that portion of that salary gets paid till then, and then something gets appropriated going on from there. Mostly what I just want to get across is that, I think as a board, we should be kept in the loop on some of this stuff, instead of just, I reached out to Ken in the beginning of the year. It's different now that we're giving all the people come in and we're issuing the permits, and he has to control it. So it's like I'm writing a check that he has to cash, and I called him on it, and I said, listen, this might run into issues. You mentioned to me that you want to close certain fields, which they need, so that the grass can grow and so forth, but I don't know that. So we've kind of lost where now he's just running that part, even though we're the board that oversees everything. And I just don't want to see that happen on the recreation side. The running of the Grove and other things, we got to get booklets out. We got to get into the schools. We are trying, and we do very well, I think, at having recreation almost pay for itself with the fees and so forth. But if those numbers start to drop down, then do we hire the kids? Do we do that? We have to know a number, and we have to start now, because we have to, a group of good kids. They come back from college and so forth. But I've been hearing from some of them that, what's going to happen? Who's going to run it? Who's doing this? They just want to know someone's there. So, in our opinion, as a board and so forth, we just feel that we have to do something, and that a recreation superintendent is definitely needed.
Well, I think that was John's whole purpose of putting this together, and that's why we
Well,
asked you folks to come tonight.
there is a park and rec, there is a recreation superintendent in the budget for FY14.
We were actually not asked to come.
Yeah,
We
I don't
were
want
asked
to,
come.
I received no email from the board.
I thought I suggested.
Or
We
anyone.
did.
No.
No?
No.
Well,
I had suggested to.
Yeah,
Yeah, that we- you-
actually,
you
yeah.
did.
Yeah, we did. I know it, yeah, I sent it.
I did
I-
not receive one.
Yeah, I sent it to,
Okay, well,
Whatever.
have to
but
check, but yeah.
The
Anyway,
whole
the
purpose
intent-
is to try to get you guys up and going because of the fact that you haven't
Exactly.
been able to get up and going.
Exactly, and I just want to say, rather than this, yeah, you got something, you didn't get anything, well, I can't produce it. But just try to keep us on board. That's all we're looking for. We just want to, to suddenly see something about, and there's specifics in here on the money and stuff like that. Up until 2 days, I just erased it off my phone the other day. I didn't even know I still had it. Call from Mark. All the things that had to get done. He would call me once a day from his hospital bed. And some of it, I think, yeah, he was lonely. Because some of these phone calls went on for like an hour and a half. And he would say, you got to do this, we got to get that done, we got to get this done, we got to, I know there's a ton of snow out there, but everything starts like the end of April.
Well, can I suggest this? Is there any way that you and Kenan can sit down with the members of the Park and Rec just to?
I thought Kenan went to a meeting of
He did.
Park and
I
Rec.
got him to come to one, and we came in, and we went over some of these maintenance things. It's the recreation side
Mhm.
that right now is we gotta get booklets out,
Yeah,
we gotta get,
right.
that's the things, and I understand there's the
Somebody has to
availability
be in
of
charge
Kate,
of doing that. That's the problem.
but Kate, she doesn't know where everything's at or all that part of it too. I've been locating the material, giving it to her and so forth. So it's, we need someone at that, you know, at this time to get all that rolling, that's all. I'd hate to see us have to, not open the Grove this year.
Well, the Grove is gonna open. It's not gonna not open. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Don.
Aside from just the Grove, I'm concerned with recreation in general in the town of Abington. I feel for a long time, our kids aren't getting nearly as many things as surrounding towns. Our kids don't have trips, day trips they should be able to make. We need to have a person in place, whether it's, you know, when the new town manager gets on board or not. I think we need to start looking for that person now to fill that position, because we need to have somebody that starts planning trips. And I know there's not a lot of startup money, we don't have money, but I'm looking at something in front of me that's saying that we have an additional $24,673.84 to go toward stipends and adjustments in salary for the superintendent and assistant superintendent of the highway department. I'm concerned why that money is not being put toward the recreation, where we can get a person in place, and with the, once the people start signing up for different programs, the town will actually make money. We shouldn't be in a position where we're sitting back, not looking to make money and expand our programs for the youth of Abington.
Well, let me just say a couple of things. First of all, I think that comment is taken out of context. If you look at what we're trying to propose, and you know what, I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, the personnel are really directed by the town manager, not by Park and Rec under the charter. We're trying to keep Pete Serino on board as a continuity. He was there last year. He ran a decent program. There was good communication between the superintendent doing the maintenance and Pete Serino. There are, Kate Casey was a camp director. Now, she was a camp director where? She was a camp director at Island Grove, is that correct? Mm-hmm. So we're looking at adding some additional money there to get her on sooner, so that we can develop the programs that need to be developed, so that we can keep the camp open.
I agree that Pete and Kate are great candidates for what they're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe they have enough time to dedicate what needs to be dedicated to the recreation department?
No, I
I'm sure you
would agree with you. I would
that-
agree that they don't. However, we are not in a position right now, and even if we were in a position right now, to go out and advertise and hire a person like Mark Shirokas. We're not going to find a Mark
No,
Shirokas.
I'm sure we won't for
And-
24,000, but
I'm gonna think for, Kate Casey is camp director. What budget does that come out?
Well, where would it come now? Where would it?
I thought it came out of, recreation.
It
The one for Peter, because I sat in with you for that was because we realized we needed an interim superintendent.
do you want to come back to the microphone so
And we
people
said,
can hear
well,
you?
no, I think I'm pretty loud.
No, go
Come
back
back
to
to
the
the
microphone,
microphone.
number one.
No, well, all I'm saying is, regardless, we're gonna need, we need a camp director.
Yes, it's
But what
correct.
we need is, besides the camp director, is we need that larger person.
Yes,
That's the
I
one I'm
don't-
talking about.
I don't disagree.
And what I'm trying to figure out also is, if we separated, okay, maintenance, which over to the highway department,
Mhm.
which now, we issue permits, which require us to ask for money. They will not get that permit unless they give us money. It goes from us, it goes over to his budget. Am I correct? There's
It
like
go-
a
it go-
section of that?
It goes to the fees, yes,
Okay,
for maintenance
okay.
and so forth.
Now, I was under the, and maybe I'm wrong because now it's kind of gotten out of our thing, that when we came to camp director and so forth, that was part of the fees, just like the lifeguards and everything else, that comes out of the recreation because we're collecting fees for the Grove.
That's correct.
Okay, so all I'm saying is this thing here about this extra salary or something like that for KK, that shouldn't even work into the pot. Right now, the way I see it, is there should be something there that's left from, which would have been Mark's money, to say or something.
Can I suggest something?
Well, no, Mark's,
We're not gonna get this resolved here tonight.
No.
Between you guys. And as I said before, I think what needs to happen is you, and your committee need to sit together, and probably with Kenan also, and if Pete Serino was the guy who's gonna be on an interim basis doing the deal, then he needs to sit down with you too, and you guys need to come together and work out how you're gonna get this whole thing resolved.
These fees are coming, this amount of money for the camp director is coming from fees.
Correct.
Okay.
And the only thing is I just got,
Russ, when do you meet again?
our meeting is on we have,
Are you
The third
meeting?
Thursday of
Are you
this
meeting
month.
monthly?
yes, the third Thursday.
Maybe you should meet more like every other week, or,
Well,
until we
it's
get
funny,
this
'cause a lot of
resolved?
things we want to meet about, we don't even have direct communication with Kenan as far as,
Well,
like,
again,
we'd like to get
is there-
like a-
can you work on getting everybody together, John, and having everybody
you
go
know,
to
like
a
we're
meeting?
taking money for programs, we don't even know if the field's available, it's just, there's not a good communication going at all.
No, and you know what, everybody's in a new position here, this whole thing is coming together, and then with Mark's death, it hasn't helped, obviously, so
Right.
I think you
And-
guys all
and
need to
really,
sit together.
We're not here to start,
No,
we just see on here, it says discussions about salaries and stuff, and that's all we just said, well,
Yeah.
we'll
right,
just say.
I'm glad you came.
And that's why, so that we're kind of brought into it, let's just
So
say.
your meeting, when is your next meeting?
It's the third Thursday, I don't have my calendar, is
Either.
there?
I can't think that.
I-
27th, I want to say?
I think you should meet sooner, because if you meet it on the 27th and the program starts in April,
21st?
21st, you're gonna need to meet sooner than that.
Next Thursday, it's a week from Thursday.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd
Tom?
like to suggest that, we're meeting on the 25th.
Correct.
Hopefully, the Park and Rec Commission can meet before that, get this ironed out, and come back through John with what exactly they need. Because, if
Are you
if
gonna
look
vote
at-
on what is needed? Because,
Well, no, the genesis started, John, that you sent out a memo, and the keywords were, it may require additional salary. You reiterated that to the board, it may require, okay? For me, I look at the highway budget, that is increased 22.7% this year. In 2011, your numbers, it was a little over 300,000. This year, it's 665,000.
that's a 50% increase.
Okay, to me, it's more like 100, but that's okay. Okay?
So what's
If it's
your
up
point?
300 Well, my point is that when I see that the park or the superintendent and the assistant superintendent got stipends for park department things, that would include getting this organized. And the other thing is, the recreation department, to these guys' point, again, maybe it's changed, I'm not aware, but right now, for 2014, you've got a budget of $152,000 up.
That's correct.
Okay, so it seems to me that you should be able to work together to figure out what you need to kind of bridge the gap and come back to the board so that these guys can start, or Kenan can start, after the 25th. I can tell you that I'm not going to just vote an open check, that it may be, I want an exact amount that you're going to need to bridge these
You're
guys.
not gonna get
to
an
the-
exact amount, because this is not an exact science. Whether you believe it or not, things change. People pass away, you have to make do with what you have, and you have to change things. If you guys want to control the day-to-day operations of the budget and who's going to get paid what, then we'll have them all parade up in front of you,
No,
and you can
John,
go through what
that's
you
not-
did 10,
that's-
15 years ago.
That's not what we're
Before
gonna
you
do, 'cause
changed the charter.
That's not what the charter says, so
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned, that's not
That's
what
what
we're gonna do.
Mr. Dion wants to
Mr.
do.
No, I
Dion is
think,
not saying
I
that.
think, I don't think Tom's suggestion as far as you guys sitting down and coming back and reporting to us at the next meeting is unreasonable. I think that's something that should happen, because you haven't done it yet, and you guys need to be involved also. You
Right,
need
well,
to-
basically, it's just, when we had Mark.
Well, you don't
he would-
have Mark,
I
and
know,
it's
when we had-
unfortunate.
All right, when we had a superintendent, they would report to us at our meetings, and they would have spreadsheets, they would have.
Right.
what's-
That's the
We're just
person
not
we're in-
getting any of that now.
Because there's
That's
nobody
what-
in that, there's nobody there.
That-
Right.
There's no-
Exactly.
we haven't filled that position, and I'm not gonna fill it, because I think it should be filled by the next town manager, whoever that person is. And in deference to the individual, he may decide to go in an entirely different direction. It may decide that you don't need a superintendent, you need somebody else. I'm not gonna make that choice. Neither is the Board of Selectmen.
So let
That's
me
an
ask- let me ask-
administrative
Let me
decision.
ask you this, John, to get things going, are you looking for this $39,000? Is that what you're looking for?
This is what we're proposing right now, but if you want us to wait, we can wait. We'll go back to the Park and Rec. And just so people understand this, there's no additional stipend in the budget for Kennan. And
What do you mean by that, then? This leaves a positive balance of $24,000, which is available to adjust salaries.
Well, let me just interrupt you, Donna. This wasn't from John. This was to John
I
from
understand
Ken.
that, but that looks like that's what,
the,
money, like, what-
other,
what we
other
look
than
for
the
is
stipends, other than the stipends that are already budgeted, that Mr. Dion has eloquently identified, there are no additional stipends going out to Kennan or to Jackie King than what is currently budgeted in their budget, which is the highway budget, which is not part of the budget for Park and Rec.
So this positive balance, what is that? That's all I want to know. I just was wondering, what is that, the positive?
That money is the difference that's available.
Is that
between
from,
now
is
and the
that
end
from
of the
fees
fiscal-
that were collected
That's
through the,
correct.
through the maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
So is it gonna give you enough time to get things up and going if we wait
Well,
until the 25th?
there's no brochures. There's no brochures printed. There's no brochures that have gone out to
I don't have
anybody.
any-
That's my question, that's my question, John. Does that need to be
That's
done
kind of
before
what
the
we're asking
25th?
We're in the process of trying to do that for them.
I was under the impression that when Kate Marini was hired, she was going to be Mark Chirokas's assistant.
That's correct.
Okay, and now in the passing of Mark, shouldn't she be able to get these things out for?
If she knew exactly what was going on, yeah.
Okay, maybe does she require further hours, like more additional hours, where we could take that 24,000 and put her or put somebody else in that position to make that happen?
That's what
That's what this
part of what we're
proposal
trying to
is.
do.
Okay, so
yeah.
that 24,000 is not then actually for additional
24,000.
stipends for the superintendent, assistant superintendent?
No.
As it states?
No.
All right, so we're gonna come back on the 25th. You guys are gonna meet before then with Kenan and with John.
Right, Kenan did drop me an email the other day, but I was gonna head over there and the storm hit, and I figured, I think he might be pretty busy.
I understand.
So I
Can
didn't,
you let us know when the meeting is?
yeah, because sometimes throwing these things back and forth, I find it's better just go talk to someone.
Yeah.
You know, you,
Yeah, and I don't disagree, and I think Kennan is the right person to talk to.
yeah, and he's certainly approachable. It's just,
Yeah.
it wasn't the right time.
I understand.
And that, you know, so, and I would have had more for you tonight. It's a matter it was on here, and there were some questions I had, and I've got the answers to them.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Russ. Thanks, Donna.
And I would just like to comment about this increase in the highway department. That budget that you're referring to adds 2 additional personnel in that budget for additional highway people to work on parking, on recreational stuff. Because last year, we spent a tremendous amount of time on highway-related matters that had to be put off because we were doing we were doing recreational stuff. And Kennan needs those 2 additional people. So that's what the increase is. It's not just in salaries, as you alluded to. It happens to be in additional personnel as well to help deal with these issues. And, you know, I think that you do a disservice when you mention these things and you don't allow for a full explanation as to why that number, that budget is increasing and the reasons for it. But
For that, I just have another question. This may not be an appropriate time to ask the question, but you spoke about last summer that they were doing so many things, that they didn't have time to do their highway, and I also heard that from Kenan. There were a lot of things done at Island Grove last year that I don't know if they were supposed to come to Park and Rec to discuss, or there were like 100-year-old trees that were cut down. There was like the clearing of the forest floor that should be there to protect it environmentally and to stop erosion. They came down, they put mulch down. I don't know who okayed that or who requested it. I watched the mulch the first rainy day wash into the grove. I'm just curious, like, so if we're spending all this time and they can't do their highway work, and they're at the Grove, which looked to me to be like busy work.
They'll be doing their
I'm
highway work
concerned.
this year.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that they will. I would like the parks done as well, but I'm concerned with why it looked like there was so much going on down there that I don't even know who asked for or approved.
First of all, the trees that were cut down were trees, now, another misrepresentation.
Well,
The trees that were cut down were the trees that were nearest the monument. That was my understanding.
They were nearest the monument, and they were also
And
protecting
the reason why they were
monument.
cut down,
Because once they came down, you could literally see the water pour through the center of the monument, because now the trees are no longer there to shelter the monument.
well, you don't want the monument sheltered if you're going to rehab the monument, and you're going to do the work that needs to be done
Ideally, you would
to
cut back
bring
the
that
branches, not
back
the
to
trees.
its original luster. We're spending $300,000 on that monument. And we're doing that, and the reason why the trees were cut down, and from my understanding, was that they needed to come down in order to do the work, because they're going to be using cranes, and cranes had to go into that area to do the testing and the boring. When you get to the point where you're doing the rehab of the entire monument, you are going to have to spend, you're going to have to, you can't do it with the trees in the way, number one. And I don't know if they were 300-year-old trees, 200-year-old trees, 100-year-old trees. I don't know how
I don't know,
old
but
they
I did
were.
watch the erosion once those trees that were removed, which was, I researched it, and they were actually planted to protect the foundation of the monument, and they were now cut down.
Trees protecting the foundation of the
They were,
monument?
the roots, so that when the water, have you been down the Grove recently? And have you seen
I've been
the
down
level
there.
of erosion that's around the monument now?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But
haven't been
I
recently,
will go down.
but At the end of the summer. I will go with you. I would like that. I would like the opportunity to show
I
you.
couldn't
Well,
ask
probably
for, I couldn't ask for
An
better
advisable
company.
thing to do.
So, that's just my 2 cents. If we're complaining that,
Russ,
Yeah.
we're not gonna get into a debate.
No,
It's a
just a
free-
point
it's a
to
free-for-all.
Tommy and a
No,
point
it's
to
not a
John.
free-for-all, Russ. No,
I talked
honestly,
with, okay.
you guys are gonna meet and come back, but, and these are things that you guys should be discussing with the town manager at your meetings, honestly, that's what should be happening, my opinion, but. Well, I think, you know, you reach out.
I have to say that I've talked to Donna and I've talked to Russ, and I think that unfortunately there was a little bit of miscommunication, and it had a lot to do with Mark and a lot
Yeah,
of different
I-
things. We moved towards the DPW last year, there was a little bit of confusion. That was the right move for the town to make. Unfortunately, it kind of left the Park and Rec, which we dearly need. We need you people to support the youth groups. They're the nuts and bolts of this town, and it's very important that they get their fields mowed, they get them in a timely fashion. We need you people to do that, but there has been a little bit of communication. We know that.
Lack of
okay?
communication.
Lack of communication. So I think going forward, we know what the problems are, and we'll see if we can correct them. And we're 100% behind you guys, believe me.
We are too.
And
I mean,
John-
we
and
just-
absolutely.
I mean,
John and I have
We
spoken
all want
to
to
it.
do what is right for the town.
We'll get it-
It's not
we'll get
just
it
a
done.
Park and Rec thing, it's a town issue.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks. Item number 7, establish a schedule for interviews of final candidates for the town manager's position. So we have 4 finalists. We did it 3 years ago. We did it on a Saturday. We scheduled 1 hour for each finalist, and that worked out pretty well. I'm not sure how you guys did it when you did it previous to that, probably similar fashion. Saturday's okay with everybody, or?
Yes. This Saturday?
Not this Saturday, I can't do it this Saturday.
23rd?
23rd I could do.
As long as I have notification, I'll either have to work in the morning till 3 or 2:30, so if I can get it out of the way by 2:30, I can do something like that.
Yeah, we should be able to do that.
And how much per, an hour per
Do it from
person?
10
Usually
to,
in-
do it from 10 to 1 or something? That'd be-
Well, maybe 9, starting at 9. And the only suggestion I'd have is just that, is try and get everybody on the same day, that that's the day we're going to do it. Start at 9 on the 23rd. And I think in terms of the format, obviously, they've already been through a process. They had defined questions that the search committee asked. I think at this level, it would be, I would suggest that whatever any member of the board wishes to ask, I think it'd be simply, if we're going to set it on the 23rd, if that's what the final vote is, that gives each individual member enough time to go out and do their own due diligence if they so desire, go visit the town. I know at one point, the last time I was on the board, I actually went to New Hampshire. We had one candidate up there. But it gives everybody the opportunity to do what they feel that they're comfortable with. And formulate your own questions. You may look at the resume and say, you know, something, based on your resume, I have questions, you know, that's not pertaining to a stock answered question. And I know in the past, people have said, which the search committee did, is they asked the same candidate all the questions. I think that's already been accomplished. At our level, in my view, it takes on a little bit different flavor, in that we then have the opportunity to check with their references, check some people that aren't their references. You know, just because they put somebody down, you may want to go to the
Beyond
town and
that,
talk
right.
to other people, you know, and get a feeling from that standpoint. So I would suggest that we limit it to an hour. I think an hour is sufficient. It may go over, it may not. Some of them may, some of them may not. But with that said, I think we should be prepared to go through that iteration on that Saturday. And if it is the 23rd, then we have a meeting on the 25th. And I think we should be, at the very latest on the 25th, be prepared to make a decision. Unless everybody's comfortable by doing your work ahead of time and based on the interviews. It's all in what everybody decides on that particular day.
Personally, I wouldn't want to make a decision that day.
No, I mean, either would I. I think you really want to have time to think about what they
the
said,
responses and-
to you know, go over in your own mind. After you leave, sometimes something comes up, and
But at least the 23rd sounds like a doable date for everybody, right? Tom?
Yeah, I agree. I think the 23rd is a doable date. Just to pick up on that, though, Kevin, I would like to think that even if we need to have a special meeting, you know, within a week, I think it behooves us all to have somebody on board sooner rather than later, so there's some sort of continuity. You know, and I wouldn't want to wait from the 25th is our next meeting to 2 weeks later. I think that's too long, so.
well, I think if we should be prepared on, if we're meeting on the 23rd, I would think
If
the
everybody's comfortable
25th.
on the 25th, and as you said, Tom, if they're not, and you want to wait another couple of days and we have to schedule another meeting, that's fine. I don't
Yeah.
think that's a big deal, so.
I mean, do you agree that we should, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we need to wait another 2 weeks after the 23rd to do it. no.
And the only other question I had, as far as some of the other logistics, contract, things like that, when does that come into play?
That comes into play after we choose the person that we think should have the position, then you enter into contract
choose.
negotiations, or if we choose. Then you enter into contract negotiations with that particular person.
And you might not be able to come to terms on a contract either.
Right.
But do we put together a pro forma or whatever that this is what we want to think about as a board?
Mhm.
And then, you know, when we enter into negotiations with he or she, I guess it'd be a he, these would be the items we'd review with that individual.
Right.
Just seems to me that we'd want to at least kind of review a contract before, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think there might be some lessons learned, you know, on both parts. And I don't think it would be the worst thing to take a look at what's in place today and have each board member take a look at it and come back with suggestions or, you know, items that we want to consider, you know, moving forward.
Well, what time do you work on Saturday, Ken?
On the 23rd, 2:30.
I was gonna say, after we finish at 1 o'clock, we could go into executive session to discuss what we would maybe want to offer, at least to put together a template of a contract.
Yeah.
We could do that. That shouldn't take more than a half hour, 45 minutes, so. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and I would suggest we do the interviews in the order that they came into us, so whoever was the first one would be at 9, first on the list would be 9, second at 10, third at 11, and the fourth one at 12.
And these interviews are open to the public.
Yep.
Okay.
And Dory, if you could arrange maybe to have it televised.
Sure.
Okay, with that said, I'll make a motion that we have a special meeting on March 23rd, Saturday, at 9 a.m. for the purposes of interviewing the 4 final candidates for town manager, and to schedule each interview 1 hour apart.
A second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank
I would
you.
also like to, if it's agreeable to the board, and we can talk about this, maybe somehow
involve the public in this process. I've seen a lot of towns, when they have finalists, they invite them to a meet and greet for the citizens of the town to come and meet them, and they'll get up and just give a short little thing about what their, their background, and then they can go off and meet the people in town. I think it'd be kind of a neat thing, maybe to open the senior center one night, and just have them all, and just say, come on, meet, and invite the citizens, whether it be the business owners. You can break them into individual groups, you can just do them all together. Business owners, the seniors, the civic groups, that sort of stuff. I think it'd be great for the citizens to be involved in. If we do it early enough, they could email, we could have a standard email address, they could email what their thoughts are. I think it'd be great if we get feedback, and it opens up the process. We talk about, transparency or something. They could talk to the people one-on-one, because a lot of people are gonna sit at our meeting while we're asking questions and think, oh, geez, I hope they ask this question. That way they'd have the opportunity to ask that question right to their face. And I know a lot of towns do it. I went on the internet and I got tons of different towns that have these, there's 2 hours on an evening, and, hopefully they can all make it. If they can't make it, then maybe we can decide as a board, and maybe we shouldn't do it or something. But I think it would be a great thing for everybody, for the town.
Well, just as far as timing-wise, if that were the case, when we do it prior to the interviews?
Yeah, we'd have to do it next week, some night next week.
Are you suggesting after the appointment's made or before?
Before.
No, I think he wants all 4 candidates.
We just read their names, and nobody in town that's watching this knows. They're gonna read in the paper, any dirt about him, or, oh yeah, he's been a town manager of this town, but they're not gonna meet the people. They're not gonna see them, face to face, and meet them and see how, they might have a question that they want asked, and they can ask it.
But my question would be, would you solicit from those people their input, and would you use that to make a
If
decision?
they, I would hope that these people, if we have a 2-hour forum, not even a forum, it's just a meet and greet. They walk around with a name badge on and say, hi, I'm, Grady Miller, or whatever, and they meet the people, and then we would tell the people that were there, say, if you have any comments, you'd like to let the selectmen know how you feel about certain candidates, then email us, or talk to them on the street if someone sees me, for us.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and, I mean, I don't have an objection if Kenny wants to take that and set it up with members of the search committee. It's entirely up to you guys if you want to. I think it's a good idea. I think if you want to do that, go right ahead, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, maybe you'd have the search committee undertake that. That's actually a good suggestion.
We have a majority of the search committee here, we could ask them.
No, you're not posted.
Not right now, you're not.
I brought this forward to them, but we didn't discuss it.
But yeah, if it's something you want to put together, I don't have any, I think it's a good idea too. It's yeah. And you could even do it here. It's, So, anybody else have any feelings or objections?
I don't disagree. I just think that, for me, I think we need to do it within the, foreseeable future.
Within
so
the
that we're
timeline,
not
yeah, well.
on the 25th.
It would have to be done by the 23rd, obviously.
Yeah, and that we wouldn't want to delay
I agree.
potentially an appointment, but, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how it's been done in the past. This is my first shot at doing this. In the past, has Board of Selectmen invited the candidates to come to town to meet the department heads ahead of time and tour the town? Or that doesn't, you just say, come to the meeting and we'll interview?
I will just say, on the first process we were in, a couple of the candidates came to the town on their own.
Right, I think
and
that's
visited the town.
same when I was doing it 3 years ago. They came and talked to
Yeah,
certain
they
department
went
heads.
around, they showed the initiative to go
Because if I
around.
reach out to these 4 candidates, I could ask them, come to the town Wednesday, if you want to come early and meet we can arrange that sort of thing.
So like
And
a
I
zip
can-
trip?
And I can work with Dory and John to come and meet the department heads here, and then they could come to this meet and greet.
Yeah, if you want.
That's
if you-
agreeable to the board, and I will I will email everybody, let them know what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you
Say
get
that
Mr.
again?
Chairman?
I think your board needs to have a fill out a
Corey's.
query form and request a transcripts.
Before-
Did they not
yeah.
do that with you folks?
No, we didn't, not until we get to the finalist stage. We didn't do queries for all 34.
No, but for these 4, you did Cory checks?
No, we did not.
You did not? All right. Transcripts?
They can't do queries.
Right. We have not, no, they have not submitted them yet, so we're more than happy to send out that email requested, unless you'd rather do it.
When we schedule the interviews, I can handle that part of it, too.
Last time we had the transcripts prior to, right?
We did.
Yeah.
Last time.
Yeah. But have you requested them at all?
No, but I put them on notice that now that your name's on the proposal, you
something we need to do.
It's something that doesn't come right away usually.
Right, yeah.
It takes a while to get them.
Some of them in, some of them have to order.
Can you do that, Dora?
The transcript piece of
Yeah.
it, sure.
ASAP? Yeah.
I will tell you that both Sean and Ann said that the process went a lot smoother with me on the board rather than you.
I'm sure they did.
Very simple for you to have them sign it.
Thank you, Sean and Ann. Okay, item number 6, town manager report.
Yeah, I got a couple of things that I want to talk about. One is the recent Thursday through Saturday snow removal operations. It was quite a different storm. The duration was longer than even the blizzard. It was not only a long duration storm, but we had many mechanical failures. We lost a transmission on one of our larger trucks. We lost at least 2 blades were snapped. These are snowplow blades. We had a contractor involved in an accident that resulted in the vehicle being totaled. There was a truck, a van traveling at about 90 miles an hour and smashed, in the middle of a snowstorm, smashed right into one of our contractor trucks, totaled the entire truck. Therefore, it delayed most of our snow response on many of the side streets. Some of the streets were not wide enough for travel purposes, and that was as a result of our limited, the larger vehicles that went down caused the delay. Of course, the transmission and the snowplow blades occurred at a time when, it was right in the heart of the snowstorm itself. And so we apologize to the residents for the side streets, and many of them were not passable. That is certainly not our operation. We do not want to operate that way. Unfortunately, we had little choice. There were many unforeseen circumstances that led to the delay. Most of the roads are now open. Sidewalks have been plowed and will continue to be plowed to open up the sidewalks on a requested basis or on an as-needed basis. But I would like to say that, given the duration of the storm, which probably will cost us in excess of $200,000, we had the blizzard that cost about $230,000. We do not believe that this storm was going to be reimbursed in any way, shape, or form, as there wasn't a declared emergency, for the state. I don't know about Plymouth County. If there are funds available, we're obviously going to apply for them like we have in the past. But we actually had to send personnel home because they were working so long during the emergency itself that fatigue set in, and it was better to send them home than it was to have them continue their operation. So that was a significant storm, and of course it was not predicted by any of the weather stations. Actually, they were predicting 3 to 6 inches of snow. We ended up with 2 feet. And it was just this narrow band that caused this, that wreaked havoc on a number of the municipalities in this area. But we do believe that all of the streets are open. They're down to pavement. We just couldn't get there as soon as we wanted to when the storm ended, but within a very short period of time, most of the roads were open, including many of the side streets where the subdivisions had wide roads. They had a narrow path to travel, which was very difficult, and that's an issue that resulted from equipment failures on our larger vehicles. Just a word of caution. The vehicles that the department has are getting old. Most of those vehicles are secured through grants, which are no longer available. And when we start looking to replace those vehicles, you're talking anywhere between $150,000 to $300,000 to replace many of those larger equipment vehicles. So it's something that we're going to have to work into capital budgets in the future, along with ambulance requests, ladder trucks and the like. So when you're looking at these capital expenditures over the next several years, you're going to see a significant increase because the wear and tear on the existing vehicles are so significant that as they continue to break down, it's going to reach a point of diminishing return where we're going to be spending more money than the vehicle is worth just to maintain it. And at that point, we're going to have to make a decision, and they're going to be quite costly capital items for the highway department that we're going to have to find a way to fund. I don't know what the answer is to that, but it is certainly something that this last storm really tested the equipment in a significant way, and a majority of the equipment failed. So the one good thing was that the sidewalk plows worked.
They looked to be working very well.
Worked fairly well. And actually, we also had an employee lose a finger as a result as well, and that usually happens from time to time with these types of storms. When the when the blade in the sidewalk plow is jammed, or they go back and forth. And it was unfortunate, but there was the accident, there was an employee rushed to the hospital, there were mechanical failures, most of that mechanical failure on our large equipment. So it was a storm that was met with a number of unfortunate circumstances that resulted in us delaying our ability to plow. And so we apologize, for that, but we believe that the highway department and the subcontractors worked as diligently as they could to clear as many streets as possible. And we did receive a couple of calls about sidewalks or about roads that were not open. And what happens when we open a road late, the resident snowplows their driveway, and they open, they've got this nice driveway, they can't go anywhere because the snow is obviously in the road, and then we come by with our large equipment and we block them.
Bury them back in.
Back in.
That happened to me twice, actually.
When we do that, what we try to do is to go back and open, the driveways, because we've obviously caused the circumstance, but we try not to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. But it was a challenging storm.
There was a lot of snow. There was a lot of snow.
Yeah, it was 2 feet of snow, and it wasn't easy. The last thing that I would like to talk about is the budget process, just a bit to bring you up to date. The finance team is meeting tomorrow, as I'd indicated earlier, to discuss any surpluses in the line items in the existing FY13 budget that we can use to reduce some of the shortfalls. We're going to do that this week, and I'll have a report to you by midweek as to where we are with that and when we think special town meeting should take place, because we're going to secure that money, encumber it, and then use it for these particular requests. The biggest item, obviously, is the budget for the trash collection, and we're looking at possibly about 120 to 115,000 that we're going to have to come up with, and we talked about where that shortfall occurred and why it occurred. But unfortunately, these are issues that at the time we fashioned the budget way back, we didn't anticipate not seeking the reimbursement or getting the reimbursement that we had initially hoped for. So unfortunately, those are some of the items. We have 5 or 6 items on the special, and we're going to try to deal with those items up front. However, there is one thing I do want to talk about, and that is the issue of Joe Colantoni. Joe not only was a longtime employee of the town, but he had accumulated vacation and sick time that is due him as a result. That obviously we may have to add an article on the special to try to take care of some of that. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that. Obviously, we didn't anticipate it when we fashioned the special, but it is certainly something that we are going to have to address at some point, either at the special or at the annual. Sooner the better, I think. And just a final note, I did participate in the Joe Colantoni's wake and in his services. And I have to say that getting to the point where we went to the cemetery, it was absolutely impressive to see the young men in uniform with the flag draped over the coffin. And it took place in Canton, but the actual ceremony of folding that flag and delivering the flag to the family was extremely, extremely touching. It was a service that was well done from the standpoint of the men and women in our service who participated, and it was a very heartfelt moment for the family as well. And you know, we are going to miss Joe here at Town Hall. Joe was a very integral part of the staff here for a number of years, 17 years, and he was an individual who, as I had indicated before, had a heart big enough to accommodate any veteran who walked through his office, and he helped anyone and everyone who needed help, and he did it in a way that really saved the town money in the long run because of the way he worked and how he got people pensions that were on a federal level for reimbursement versus any state expenditures that we have to expend, and then we get 75% reimbursement, saving the town hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. What I'm going to tell you is that I think that the next town manager who's coming in should fill that vacancy. I will make a temporary appointment for that position. Bob Pratt, who has been working with Joe over the past several months, is somebody who can take that position on an interim basis, on a part-time, short-term basis, so that we don't lose continuity of service in our veterans who are in Abington at this point and who desire services. There was a discussion about with some of the managers about regionalizing veteran services with a couple of other communities. I don't know how the board feels about that, but obviously that is an option to consider. There are some drawbacks to that option that the board should be aware of. And I had the discussion with Joe, although it was very painful at the time, to talk to him about regionalizing, which he was absolutely 100% totally against. And so it wasn't met with much flavor at the time, but you know, certainly there's a veteran agent retiring in Whitman. We have our situation here in Abington. Does it make sense for us to look at an option of regionalizing that service to some degree? We've regionalized dispatch with respect to Holbrook and the fire department. That's working you know, well. The drawback to that is obviously the veteran in Abington who may feel that he doesn't have a full-time veteran agent that he can go to, he or she can go to at any point in time. And those are, it depends upon how it is structured, but I will obviously leave that to the new town manager. But I will tell you that I would think that you should weigh in on whether you want a regional veteran service or you want your own individual veteran agent here. And I think you need to take into consideration the feelings of the old-time vets who obviously, when you talk about old-time vets, you're talking about the Vietnam War vet. Before it used to be World War II.
Don't
look at me.
But you guys are getting old. So it would be something that the board needs to consider. And I think if you could give me some sort of direction at the next meeting as to how you would like to proceed, I can at least set the process in motion and leave it up to the new manager to make that final decision.
Want to put that on the agenda for the next
Yeah,
meeting?
we'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Can you maybe come up with a list of pros and cons? as
Yes,
far as what
I can do that and
regionalization-
get that out to you. One last item. We do have an individual who, on August 30th, 2012, was hired as our network administrator, Wayne Norland. After a 6-month employment evaluation and performance and salary review would take place. Now, he's approaching his 6-month period of time, and we're looking to provide him with an additional amount of compensation. There's about $10,000 in that line item. We have taken some of that money and used it for some of the salary increases prior to, but we're looking at increasing his salary by $2,500. He's making $65,000 right now. He would go to $67,500, but that requires, under the new policy, the board to vote on that.
Can you put that on the agenda for next meeting?
Excuse me?
Can you put that on the agenda for the next meeting? Because if it requires board action, we should have it on the agenda.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that.
If that's something you're looking for.
Mhm. Yep.
Any questions? That it, John?
That's it.
Thank you. Item number 7, public comment. Any public comment? No public comments? Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Chris.